session of the Queen's University of Belfast Literary and Scientific Society. Now, you may be wondering whether there's been a coup, whether the Trust has taken over the council and installed me as president, but that is not the case. Mr. Dermot Hamill, HLM, our dear president, is unfortunately very ill and has asked me to step in for this evening about an hour ago. So I quickly rushed home, put on a suit and came here. So, the first bit of business this evening is, do we have any council announcements? Mr. Day.
Yes. Hello everyone. So just to bring some events to your attention, it's appropriate we have the drum on the stage because we're starting February off with a bang because on January, which is next Tuesday, we're going to have UP leader and Minister of Health Mike Nesbitt at the Canada Room for 7 p.m. and then also on the 19th of February we're going to have leader of the SLP, Claire Hanna, in our very own McMurdy Hall at 7 p.m. as well. So get excited, start telling your friends, I hope to see you all there.
Thank you. Do we have any other council announcements?
Hi all, hope you're enjoying the Turncock so far. We don't have a format at the moment for signing up to express an interest in debate, which means you're forced to actually approach me or message me. If you would like to speak on a debate, next week is This House Would Not Have Children. So Sam, no. So if you're particularly passionate on either side of that debate, please find me afterwards. Thank you.
Do we have any other council announcements?
I don't think Baker's here, but our first social is happening on the 5th of February.
Yes.
Yes, and it's a silly French game I've not learned the rules of, but Baker keeps it straight into me. A hide and seek.
Okay, this is on, I believe, Wednesday. So I think the way that this works is
7 p.m. outside the land.
yeah, everyone will meet 7 p.m. outside the library and put £8, I think, into
That's
the
right.
bucket, and then some of it goes to charity, the rest goes into a pot.
And whoever apparently finds the president gets to indulge the money in alcoholism.
And apparently the president will be dressed in a costume of some description.
I'm not privy to such information.
Hopefully better by the time that goes around. There are some other announcements, I think. So, 2 weeks' time is our 175th anniversary celebrations. So I think we've got the debate that week will be on the Wednesday rather than the Thursday, and it will be in the Canada Room, and there will be other universities coming along to participate in said debate. And then on the Thursday we're launching a book on the history of the society, which will be in the Senate Room at 7 p.m. and Professor Margaret Topping, one of the Pro-Vice Chancellors of the University, will be hosting that along with myself. And then it hasn't been announced yet, but our annual formal conversazione is taking place at the Ulster Reform Club on Monday the 24th of March. So you're all very welcome to sign up once that goes out. And I had discussed this with Baker and the President on the anniversary week to bring, I'm a member of the Reform Club, to bring everyone to the Reform Club to have some drinks on the day of the anniversary, so I can show you around the building and you can all have alcohol. Feel free to come in and take a seat somewhere. If that's all of the announcements for this evening, I will hand over to Mr. Secretary to read the minutes of the last meeting.
I hit 2 party rings before I came up here, so excuse me if my voice wanes slightly. Anyway, on Thursday the 23rd of January 2025, the Queen's University of Belfast Literary and Scientific Society convened for the 12th Ordinary Meeting of the 176th session to debate the motion This House Would Boycott X. We first opened with council announcements, where President Dermot Hamill thanked Jack for the 8 minutes of minutes. We then moved to Baker, who gave notice of the silly French game you've already heard. Misha encouraged all to sign up for debates, and Dan gave notice of the 2 lit talks that he's already mentioned. We then moved to private members' business, where we heard responses from Hugh Child, Misha Gerard, Ryan Hoey HLM, Luke Collins, Grant Warren HLM, Tom Burns HLM, Jack Steele, Misha Gerard, former President Emeritus Tailte McSparron HLM, Grant Warren HLM, and Luke Collins. I then moved to President's question, where Flynn asked the President, "What did you have for breakfast?" He said McDonald's and 4 cigarettes. We then moved to Jack Douglas, who asked the President, "If you were to become the Pope, what would your name be?" And he said John Paul. Ryan Hoey HLM asked, please note that I don't know what I was writing there, to be honest, but please note that former President Emeritus Andrew Crothers passed on his kindest regards. for something I've forgotten. But
that's
correct, yes. We then moved to Ray Theme, who asked the President whether you could repeat verbatim to the House what he said about Ray's dad. Dermot then said, and I'm quoting directly for the purposes of the video, it's not my own. He said, "He is fit, a dilf, and I would totally let your dad bench press me." Tom Byrne, HLM, said, "If you could sit in a tiny arena and sign an executive order, what would it be?" Dermot said he would appoint Ray's dad as a national security advisor because they live very nearby the President. President Awareness, Calvin Black, HLM, asked, "Will he commit to using the social media to post a picture of Ray's dad?" No comment was received. Donald Penny asked, "Can the next time motion be this House believes Ray's dad is fit?" No comment was received. Sam Healy said, "Why is your mustache back?" Dermot said, "I grew it." There was then a vote of prior opinion taken. There were 11 votes for the proposition, 14 for the opposition, and 5 for abstention. The motion falls and the opposition carried it. The President gave an overview of the rules and we moved to the first speaker, Hugh Child. Hugh talked us through the pitfalls of Musk's first few months of ownership of X and how he unbanned extreme accounts. Hugh said that Twitter's become dangerously anti-free speech, particularly with regard to gender. Including this, Hugh said that Elon Musk has been overwhelmingly boasting and platforming the far right and the alt-right, with masses of information now taking over the platform. On the first on the opposition was Ethan McCauley, who told the House how Musk has bought X because he wanted people to listen to his opinions and hear what he said, citing that X is now worth 72% of what it was whenever he bought it. Boycotting X will not work with Musk because it's just a bit of fun for him, and we risk letting it become a far-right echo chamber. Ethan contended that having liberals on one platform and conservatives on another is not the way that free speech should be. If we have to challenge the right, she insisted, we should do it in the same chamber. Ethan then gave the example of 4chan as a precursor to what X could become if we abandoned it to wreck and ruin. Second on the proposition was Luke Collins. X, Luke asserted, has moved extremely far to the right, becoming a platform of misinformation. Luke decried Musk as a megalomaniac interested only in boosting the alt-right, instead of real humanitarian causes. Musk has made dishonourable claims about presidential candidates, dismissed world leaders, supported race riots, and thrown support behind far-right parties, Luke insisted. Luke said that Musk has driven X into the ground, sacking 80% of the staff, and the suspension of accounts having tripled since his takeover. Second on the opposition was George Farnham. George began by saying that X is a left-wing bubble, having been blocked several times himself. Maybe they were Seattle bots, he contemplated briefly. Twitter is the best form of media and no one else has reached the height of Twitter. Blue sky is just, and I quote, woke. There are undoubtedly problems with Twitter, such as misinformation, but George insisted that Twitter can be compared to Witherspoons. You can have a nice conversation with new people over some drinks. You can learn new information and become more educated. George found out exclusively from X that they are trying to push back the date of Surrey County Council elections, which was very upsetting for him. Twitter is valuable because George is an anti-woke activist, and if you boycott X, then George will not have anything to do. Admittedly, he made some non-political posts about Lady Gaga, but we cannot boycott X, otherwise we will not be able to challenge racial thieves. Third on the proposition was Noah Rels, maiden speaker. Noah opened by referring to the Great Modern Society of Croydon. Twitter, he said, has become an oracle of fear and violence. We should boycott it. X emboldens the far right and targets key individual and civil liberties that we are accustomed to in our world. Speaking on freedom of speech, Noah said that we need self-determination and self-fulfillment. Very, very sadly and tragically, he then referenced John Stuart Mill, saying the harm principle is what we should be considering. Since the takeover by Musk, X has polarised society, which affects different communities poorly. Third on the opposition was Luke Duffy. Luke started by mentioning that Twitter has a vital role for independent global journalism and crisis communication, unlike traditional media, which operates under delays and constraints. Citing the example of the Arab Spring and indeed the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, Twitter allows for the rapid spread of misinformation and information, but we have to defeat that by correcting and bringing accurate information to the table. A boycott risks a mass exodus of responsible citizens and journalists, leaving Twitter in the hands of extremists. Endless people, businesses and charities rely on the platform, we would say. A vote on speaker ability was then called. I've left the questions out to speed it up this evening. There were 9 votes for the proposition, 13 for the opposition and 8 abstentions. Thus the opposition carried the vote for speaker ability. Can I take the minutes as read?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for those minutes. We are now going to move to private members' business, which is your chance to talk about anything you've seen in the news or any topics that you want to put before the House for discussion. Do we have any pieces of private members' business? Please state your name for the minutes.
Luke Collins, I think it was yesterday, was Robert F. Kennedy's, Robert Kennedy Jr.'s a confirmation hearing, obviously in the Senate. I just thought it was very interesting because after years of saying that vaccines were the worst and vaccines causing autism, he stated that his kids were vaccinated and he therefore supports vaccinations. But obviously for a lifetime of work stating that vaccines are the worst and you should drink raw milk instead, I think he's just being contradictory and just lying for the job, really.
Do we have any thoughts on this piece of prime ministers on Robert Kennedy? Please stay there for minutes.
Future Child, I just think that's further proof that we should have elected to bring one.
Any other thoughts on Robert Kennedy Jr.? Please stay there for minutes.
Nisha Gerard, just on the vaccine point, my parents were hippies who didn't vaccinate me because of fear of autism, and look how I turned out.
Any other points on this? Any other pieces of private members' business? Please stay there for minutes.
I think the most important bit of news that came out this week, more than anything happened in America or any big economic announcements in the UK, Legal are opening a pub in Dundonald. I think this could have massive effects on the Wetherspoons community and other cheap drinkers, such as all of us. What do we think about Legal opening a pub in Dundonald? Should there be more pubs in shops? If so, which pubs and which shops?
Any thoughts on pubs? Please stay there for minutes.
Jonathan William. As a resident of East Belfast, I can with certainty say that Legal opening in Dundonald will be one of the only highlights of living in the area, and I encourage its development.
Please stay there.
Grant Warren. I think a pub in Legal and Dundonald is great crack. I pass it in the bus every morning when I get into Belfast. The idea that I could get off that stop going for a cheap pint and then get back on the bus and on the morning commute sounds very, very good to me.
Is there anyone else who's an alcoholic in the house who wants to come in?
Yes, well I was delighted to hear this news about 15 seconds ago when Tom announced it tonight. I think it should be at the top of the big hill in Dundonald, and then all the Dundonald people won't be able to get up without their oxygen tank.
Any other pieces of private business? Please say no.
Future I'm sure everyone saw that DeepSeek AI has just launched and crashed NVIDIA's stock. I'd just like to hope everyone would join me in celebrating an AI losing its job to AI.
Any thoughts on AI?
I think the really funny part is the fact that NVIDIA's stock recovered relatively quickly because it turned out that DeepSeek was able to achieve what it had achieved by using NVIDIA chips.
Any other thoughts on this?
I think Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, made very brazen complaints that DeepSeek AI was stealing material from ChatGPT and stealing its resources, like OpenAI's intellectual property, which is a very rich comment coming from the guy who made ChatGPT, of course.
Go ahead.
A small point of that, DeepSeek does use NVIDIA GPUs, but it doesn't use the 30,000 to 40,000 pound ones that use OpenAI's system, so it is still a pretty significant technical achievement. It uses about a 300th of the power that OpenAI uses.
No problems. I think the best part about the difference between DeepSeek and ChatGPT is essentially the same app, but if you ask DeepSeek, is Taiwan a state? It says Taiwan is not a state and it's under legal ownership of the Chinese government.
I'm going to need help writing this one out. I have no idea what it is.
Please submit this in writing to the secretary at the end of the meeting. Go ahead.
Beth Lennon.
Hello there.
I don't really care what the socio-political ramifications of it is. I just hope it's as good as doing my homework as ChatGPT is.
I'm sure we don't have many speeches tonight written by any AI. Any other thoughts on AI or any of this stuff? No? Any other pieces of private business? Surely there must be something that went on this week. Go ahead.
I wasn't here for the questions last week, but what do we think about Kneecap being absolutely snubbed at the Oscars?
I did come up last week, but I'm sure we can talk about it again. Go ahead.
I just reiterate what I said last week, which was I'm not really particularly a fan of Kneecap. I think they're really spies, but the fact that they understand, of course, says that they're nominated for a standard British film in the BAFTAs. After that whole court case and that whole row with Kenny Dalton being knocked over it. So I think they've already won award season. So yeah, they're spies, but fair play to them and stuff. The absolute shit measure often has to be.
Any thoughts on Kneecap?
thought Reggie Gervais killed the Oscars last time.
Any thoughts on the Oscars?
I just wanted to repeat what I said last week, and Amelia Perez has been nominated for as many Oscars as Gone with the Wind. I'm really upset about it.
Any other thoughts on this? Any last piece of environmentalism? Anyone else? No? Well, I'll move on to President's questions, which is the chance for 5 minutes to ask me a question about anything that doesn't go against my privacy rights.
Well, Mr. Acting President, if I'm correct, this is the second time you've been in the chair in your long and illustrious career. Just to remind the House, could you remind us all of what the first year was when you attended the Literific?
2018, and it was a year after Mr. Black over there was president. I did not get to see. Well, I was going to say there was someone else who was older in the room, but anyway. But yes, I didn't get to see Mr. Black as president. Well, yeah. Any other questions? Go ahead. Please state your name for a minute.
Matthew Spratt for that. Mr. President isn't recovered by the social. Will you be in said
Well, it does sound like a good deal because the person who goes in the costume has to go somewhere, find a pub, and hide in there at the bar with the bucket of money and drink as much as they possibly can until people find them. It's about, I mean, I think this is I'm just relaying the rules. And when they find them, then the team that finds them first then gets to take part. Is I think how the game works. So I would quite like to be given a big bucket of cash and go to a pub somewhere and start drinking. So yes, I will happily start in for that as well. Please take name for minutes.
The same there for the minutes. Given the recent release of the film Better Man, if you were given the opportunity to make a musical biopic, which artist would you choose and what animal would you have to portray him?
I will choose Charlie XCX. And what animal? A zebra. Please state your name for the minutes.
Flynn Nugent, you're going to have to answer the question that's asked every week now. What did you have for breakfast?
Well, a bit of context for the newbies. This question started in 2012 and has been asked consistently at the society for going on 13 years now. I had what I have most mornings, which is porridge with honey and raspberries. So very healthy breakfast, but also kind of played into the theme of being old. So yeah. Go ahead.
If you weren't president tonight, what was your pre-planned private member's business going to be?
That's a good point actually. I actually had thought of some private member's business. I'm trying to remember what it was. See, the thing is, as soon as a piece of information is no longer needed, I kind of like get it out of my brain as quickly as possible, so I can store all stuff in there. So I can't actually recall at the moment. But if I remember, I will let you know, and I'll raise it next week. Any other questions? Go ahead.
So you're acting as president tonight. But say you and Dermot were to scrap, and the winner then gets to be president of the Literific. Would you back yourself to win?
I mean, Dermot's quite small and skinny, but I think like he's probably got more experience in fighting than I have.
I think you can say he's from South Armagh.
Yeah, he is from South Armagh, so he might use some underhand tactics.
For breakfast, and he has spicy noodles and a cigarette.
True. In his current state, in his current diminished state, I might be able to take him on, but it depends on the context and the time. Any other questions?
Okay, Mr. Acting President or Guest Chair or whatever the title is you're choosing to go with, are there any other big society events happening in the month of February that you would like to encourage everybody to mark on their calendars and attend?
Well,
leading questions.
You've suddenly reminded me that tonight also, well done to Warren and Ella who were in the semi-finals of the Irish Times last week. I think Henry's down this evening in the semi-finals, so hopefully he gets through to the final. And then perhaps final of the Irish Times might be heading up north. Yeah, up north. No, not Donegal. To a different jurisdiction if you want to be more unionist about it. But it'll be, so the final of the Irish Times might be at the end of the month and might be being held in Belfast, and we might want to encourage everyone to come along because it's a very good event with lots of universities from across the island coming in, some guest speakers, and lots of free alcohol. So, yeah.
Everybody comes here about once every 7 years.
Yeah. I think the last time it came up, well, I'm not confirming or denying that it is coming up, but maybe the last time it was under your presidency.
Oh God, that's not why I asked.
Any other questions?
Saying that everyone's come for the minutes. Given 6 months and unlimited funding, how would you, without the use of anabolic steroids, train a silverback gorilla?
You ask very, very weird questions, right? It's like a challenge to come up with the most intricate ways to put the president off each week, which I like.
I spend at least 3 hours a week on this.
I like it. I shall refuse to answer it. Any other questions?
John from Massey for a minute. Mr. President, given the option, let me set out a scenario. There is a trolley coming down the track and it's going to hit one person, but you and only you have the opportunity to divert it to another track. However, on this other track is another switch, and there is someone else doing the switch. The switch has two paths, one that leads to 2 people, and one that leads to another switch. This switch has 2 options, one with 4 people and one with another path. Given the opportunity, do you kill the one person and do you double it and give it to the next?
Next person so they kills the maximum of Any questions from this side of the room? I feel like my gaze has been over to this side of the room for longer on. Any questions from this side of the room? Can't see that far. Oh! What's your question?
I would like to give my question to Calvin back.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm going to quickly steal these minutes. Mr. President, there is. Yes. Do you, Mr. President, do you agree with Mr. Hamill's assessment that Ray's dad is fit for the deal? You would probably let him bench press you?
I've yet to see a photo of Ray's dad, so I cannot comment. But I would trust the president's judgment on this one.
I think you asked to see if it was at the pub last week.
I did.
You were rebuked.
It did happen.
I think you either choose not to share it or.
If anyone else wants to show me a picture of the dad, then I can comment on the relative fitness of said individual, then I can do. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Kremlin or Boondocks?
Finally, a good president's question. I don't know. I would have said Kremlin a while ago, but then they put in a one-way system, which I think is authoritarian. And it's also incredibly busy at Kremlin. Like the last 2 times I've tried to go, with Edwin Thompson's because we couldn't get in. So I maybe have to go for a boombox just because I can actually get in there. And I imagine we'll probably end up with a boombox after Conversazione, which you should all come to in March. Any final questions?
You didn't answer the question about the
based on my comments regarding Lady Gaga, which I also favourite Lady Gaga song.
Despite not completely agreeing with the message of the song, I will go with Born This Way. But I said I don't agree with it completely because I think that it is a bit of, everyone's a mixture of nature and nurture, but it is a good song nonetheless. Right, I think that is the end of President's questions. Right, so So, the next thing we'll move on to is the vote of prior opinion, and this is your thoughts on the motion this evening before hearing any of the speeches. So, the motion is this House would legalise cannabis. All of those who are stoners and would like to vote for the motion, please raise your hand. Please raise your hand now.
Wow, this site's very good.
Yeah.
Can everyone on this side please raise their hands a bit higher? Are you voting or not? You remember your votes. Yes, 14.
Yes, I can count the secretary. And those who would like to vote against the motion, please raise your hand now. What did you get? This is a very.
I was too busy focusing on Christians in the one row.
I know, it's very right.
It is. These guys are all Christian unionists. These guys want cannabis.
And all those who would like to abstain on the motion who don't have an opinion. We got it right this time. Mr. Secretary, can we please have the vote of prior opinion?
You can. There were 14 votes for the proposition, 8 votes for the opposition, and 7 votes for the 7 abstentions. Thus, the proposition carries the motion.
Right, before we get to the first speaker, just a reminder of the rules. Speeches are 7 minutes at length. The first and last minute is protected time, which means you can't ask a question during the first minute and the last minute. The end of the first minute will be signalled by the bell. Can you please say the bell? No barracking, which means that you can't. I probably should have written the rules down. My brain's just not working. Yes, so everyone knows the rules by now anyway. Yes, to ask a point of information, raise your hand and say, on that point of information, POI, the speaker can choose to accept or decline, and please don't repeatedly barrack a speaker if they deny a point of information. And also, no swearing as per the rules of the Constitution. If you swear, you'll be fined a lot of court, although no one ever enforces the rule or brings the fort, which I think is a very dear shame. Right, without further ado, we shall move to the first speaker for the proposition, which is, I know it's Noah, but I don't know your last name. Noah Ralphs?
Yes.
Yes.
I generally thought this would be less scary the second time around. So, my arguments for legalising cannabis fall into two perceptions, an emotive argument and a rational one. There will be a lot of statistics from the economical side, but I thought it would be good to start off with what we actually mean by legalising cannabis. Because I've been to places across the world where that means different things. In Amsterdam, for example, it's highly regulated. It's more of a coffee shop. Style, what they like to smoke. But I've also been to New York and Toronto where you're allowed to smoke on the streets. It's really in your face and people just get turned off by this. I personally, and so are the British mainstream political parties, are in favour of the coffee-style Amsterdam system. This would mean cannabis would be highly regulated into coffee bars, cafes, not coffee shops, with it, and would not be permitted to be on the street. It'd be a bit like drinking alcohol. You'd be fined and it'd be tightly regulated. This means that the people on the street that don't like the smell, frankly, would not have to smell it. And social, yes.
Would you really like the UK to like Amsterdam, purely known for cannabis use and prostitutes?
Amsterdam is a lovely city that was founded in the 10th century, I believe. It's full of historic monuments. I would also like to point out, any person that was not participating in socially desirable behaviour because they were black would be arrested. My next point is the economic arguments about this. The British government and the Irish government are losing so much money in tax revenue, not bringing through VAT of the sale of cannabis.
On that point?
Yes.
Given that the UK is already currently the world's largest producer of legal cannabis, do you not think the UK is already extracting close to the maximum tax value out of that?
No, they can get more. Thank you for seeing one of my points. I literally have it right in front of me. Britain is one of the largest suppliers of medical cannabis, where it's legal, particularly CBD. You can buy in Holland and Barrett. And in 2016, it was expected that it was a leader producing 44% of medical cannabis at 95 tonnes. In 2021, it increased its supply to 329,000 tonnes. The legalisation of cannabis is expected, if we did it in the American or Canadian style system, would raise about £2.5 billion in VAT. That is much more than was promised on the side of the bus in the Brexit referendum. And a coffee shop system, what I would be more in favour of, would generate £1.4 billion in tax revenue. This would be enough to pay the annual salaries of all midwives and ambulance crews in England and Wales and Scotland and Northern Ireland. I would like to point out that this money would not necessarily go to medics, obviously, but there is a £14 million black hole in the British economy that Rachel Reeves keeps on talking about. This would be an amazing way to extract more revenue, more tax revenue to the British people. It would better allow us to fund social services that are criminally underfunded, such as the NHS and the education system. As I said, I grew up in the British public school system and health system. This is very much underfunded. I have a lot of stories if anyone wants to come up in libraries and hear me rant. I know you wouldn't want to. And also, this extrapolation of tax revenue is very popular. In 2018, 72% of the Evening Standard, what is considered a fairly right-wing and traditional newspaper, was supportive of legalising cannabis on the basis that it would bring in more VAT revenue or sales tax revenue. We could set the price of whatever we wanted, it would be regulated, and people would be allowed to freely buy cannabis.
On that point?
Yes?
In Alberta, Canada, in 1 year, 49 cannabis shops shut down because there wasn't enough business, because the strands weren't strong enough and it was too expensive. So they're just going illegal.
I have been to Alberta. It's a very traditional old people place. Not to offend people of Alberta for the camera. And also, and also the fact of the matter is, I did have a point. Sorry, what was the first bit of the statement? It was Alberta's, they're closing down shops, aren't they?
Yeah, they're just going to like the illegal means to get their cannabis.
I remember my point now. I'm not endorsing the Canadian style of legalising cannabis. I'm endorsing an Amsterdam coffee style system. My point here is that we could get so much revenue in tax that we could fund our social services while also being able to smoke weed and cannabis.
On that point?
It's not weed, it's cannabis, yes.
Alcohol costs society 15 times more than it's gained in revenue from taxation because of the impacts of driving under the influence in car crashes and the cost which is incurred in repairing the physical damage to one's body due to excess alcohol consumption. Surely the same would apply to the consumption of cannabis.
Alcohol has a high opportunity cost as it costs the more to the NHS. Cannabis has never killed but has never directly killed anyone, unlike alcohol. I would argue that this is the way forward. I would argue this is a great way. We live, unfortunately some, in a capitalist system where consumption is key. So we should be able to consume whatever we like. And if that is regulated cannabis, I don't believe that is a bad thing, and I believe the VAT revenue would be spent very well in our system.
On that point?
Yes?
If we should be allowed to consume anything, should I be allowed to fly back black tar heroin and take that?
I said regulated. Anything was a mispronunciation of my words. I meant cannabis. I apologise for the miscommunication of my words. Finally, I know that there are some people, and this is a side note, that believe in traditional Christian values, that we cannot smoke cannabis because of Christianity. And I would like to point out to what my brother said to me when I said to him this argument. Show me in the Ten Commandments where it says, "Thou shalt not have a split." Please tell me what passage Jesus says, I don't think you should be smoking cannabis. Because frankly, I think this makes sense on an emotive argument and a rational argument. And I do not think that traditional values should be really involved in this debate. And my empiricism, I try and base most of my politics off of a well-regulated cannabis market would be good for the economy. It allows us to have more freedom and it allows us to smoke weed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that brilliant speech, and now I'd like to call Matthew Spratt to open the case for the opposition.
Good evening, everybody. There is no doubt that we are living in a time of rapid social change, where common sense beliefs are being questioned and right and wrong is being redefined like never before, in the words of Donald. As these things change, one thing remains absolute, and that is fact. And the fact of the matter is that cannabis is an illegal and it is an addictive substance that needs to remain illegal. Do you really think the government came together one day and sat down and said, "Hi sir, see that plant over there? We need to ban it." No, of course they didn't. It would be illogical. Instead, what they'd done, and not the proposition to take note, what they'd done was they sat down, they examined the facts, and they stepped back and they looked at the dangers that cannabis posed to individuals, families, and societies. No, thank you. And decided that it must not be consumed for public safety. Tonight, we will disprove the false narrative that cannabis is harmless. Madam President Emeritus will provide an insight into the commercialisation of cannabis. And Jonathan, well, I'm not quite sure what Jonathan's going to do yet, but we're going to find out. The proposition will attempt to spin the idea that cannabis is harmless. But studies have shown time and time again this is not accurate. The scientific research institutions have conducted studies proving that cannabis smoking is harmful for one's respiratory and cardiovascular health.
On that point?
Yeah, go for it.
Why are we talking about banning cigarettes at the same time?
Yes, I'll get to that, thank you very much. Well, actually, the government is introducing that legislation so people born in 2008 cannot consume cigarettes. Firstly, let's look at respiratory health. The smoking of cannabis has been scientifically proven to be linked to chronic bronchitis and histologic changes in airway epithelium. You can tell I'm not a scientist. In addition, the smoking of cannabis, and watch this, I'm going to pronounce it right, produces carcinogens and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, thus raising the concern for numerous cancers, including lung cancer. How about you put that in your joint and smoke it? That's not all though. Cigarette smoke compared to smoking cannabis. Cannabis smoking compared to smoking cigarettes results in 3 times the amount of inhaled tar and 4 times the amount of inhaled carbon monoxide.
On that point.
No thanks. A study carried out by world-renowned physician Professor Richard Beasley of the Medical Research Institute of New Zealand highlighted that when measuring airflow obstruction, 1 cannabis joint had similar effects to 5 tobacco cigarettes. Furthermore, there was a direct link between smoking cannabis and the hyperinflation of the lungs and airways, resulting in decreased lung density.
On that point,
Yeah.
the smoking wouldn't be the only way to ingest cannabis, you eat it as well, so...
Yeah, well, eating cannabis ain't good, is it? Furthermore, there is a direct link between increased blood pressure when one eats, smokes, consumes, puts it up your nose, whatever you want to do with it. That's none of my business. But anyway, it doesn't take Professor Beasley to tell us that the smoking of cannabis or any smoking is bad. In fact, I'll put money on it. I'm telling you, I walk into any primary 7 school class in the country and they'll tell you smoking is bad. Smoking cannabis is bad. It is simple common sense. However, there is more to the equation than the health aspect. What about the financial cost of legalising cannabis? As I said to Noah, the alcohol is 15 times more expensive to society than it brings in tax revenue. If we lift the restrictions on the use of cannabis, the same will apply undoubtedly. If cannabis is legalised, for those unfortunate individuals who suffer from substance abuse, where will they go for their medical assistance, and how will it be financed? In this scenario, they'll obviously and rightfully seek medical assistance from our wonderful National Health Service, and they're very entitled to do so. But any care will be provided and funded by the taxpayer. Yes, everyone is entitled to health care, but no, you shouldn't be entitled to our tax money if you decide to smoke a joint and then need medical care because you deliberately carried out an illegal action which poses significant risk to your body. The responsibility for providing health care in this unique scenario shouldn't be on the taxpayer. There are alternatives.
Is it a unique scenario, even though you just said that alcohol poses the same threat from drunk driving?
Yeah, well, essentially, in regards to alcohol consumption, there should also be alternatives to medical care based upon alcohol that are not taxpayer funded. Yeah, fair point. Our citizens do not work hard and they do not pay tax to have it utilised on facilitating the illegal consumption of drugs. Instead of taxpayer money being spent in this area, we should be focusing on a compassionate, preventative and educational approach to help those who are controlled by cannabis consumption regain control of their lives. If cannabis is legalised, it will severely harm the state of the NHS. And you only have to go in to the National Health Service, A&E, on a Friday night and see the burden which is put on the NHS by people who have experienced injuries or conditions which are purely avoidable, but they're experiencing them due to an excessive consumption of alcohol. We have a duty of care to provide an environment where the NHS can operate effectively, and we have a duty of care to provide an environment where people feel safe in receiving that care. If we legalise cannabis, we will not only, my friends, have failed morally, but we will have failed the NHS and most vulnerable people who we have an obligation to protect and care for. In conclusion, as the proposition want to open the floodgates and flood our streets with cannabis, we want to protect society by focusing on education, prevention and support for those with substance abuse. Together, let's prioritise the health and safety of our society and continue to keep cannabis off our streets. And the fact remains the same. Cannabis costs money and it costs lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew, for that speech, and I now call Grant Warren H1 to continue case for the proposition case.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President, and thank you, Matthew, for that great speech. I'm going to follow up his baseless speech with an even worse set of baseless accusations. The opposition tonight are feeding you a pile of crap. In fact, they are the nanny state. They are a bunch of petty autocrats who want to take your spliffs off you. They want to deny you the great therapeutic, transcendental benefits of smoking marijuana. And ingesting it by agreement. Anyway, on more serious, I'll be speaking firmly in support of the motion for us tonight. This House would legalise cannabis. The legalisation of cannabis is a step towards a more just, pragmatic and free society. I will argue in favour of this motion on three key grounds: the undeniable medicinal benefits of expanding access to cannabis, the fundamental principle of personal freedom, and the economic and legal efficiencies that legalisation would bring. First, the medicinal benefits of cannabis are irrefutable. As you may know at the minute, medicinal use of cannabis is legal, but only under a special prescription issued by a registered doctor and General Medical Council's special registry. This is prohibitively restrictive for people suffering from chronic illnesses such as chronic pain, epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, and other debilitating conditions.
On that point?
No, thank you. Scientific research and real-world evidence from countries like Canada and Germany demonstrate that cannabis-based medicines can provide effective relief where traditional treatments fail. Legalising and regulating medicinal cannabis, although it already exists, but reducing the stigma around it would not only ensure safer, controlled access for those in need, but also reduce reliance on opioids, which carry a far higher risk of addiction and overdose. Moreover, a well-regulated industry could generate significant tax revenue and create jobs while undermining the illicit market. Denying patients access to a treatment that could drastically improve their well-being is both unethical and counterproductive. Legalisation is the compassionate and logical choice. Furthermore, the stigma surrounding cannabis has led to bureaucratic red tape, preventing even those in dire need from obtaining a legal prescription. A regulated legal market would ensure that patients receive safe, controlled doses rather than forcing them into the hands of drug dealers with unregulated, potentially harmful products. No, thank you. And while the opposition might raise the point of products like CBD oil, for instance, the science with regards to CBD is disputed and the benefits aren't clear. Second, legalisation is a matter of personal freedom, something Mr. Acting President values incredibly highly. The very foundation of a liberal democracy is the principle that individuals should be free to make choices about their own lives, provided they do not harm others. Libertarian philosophy teaches us that the state should intervene in our lives only when necessary to prevent direct harm to others. We already allow substances such as alcohol and tobacco, the working man's vices, both of which have well documented health risks. How then can we justify banning cannabis when it is arguably less harmful than these legal substances? No, thank you. In a truly free society, adults should have the right to decide what they put into their own bodies. Criminalising cannabis use is paternalistic and unnecessary. It is the nanny state at work. No, thank you. The government should not dictate personal lifestyle choices, particularly when those choices do not endanger the wider public. Third, legalising cannabis would free up vast amounts of public resources. The opposition here would rather see almost 1,000 people over the last 3 years who have been arrested and sent to prison for non-violent cannabis-related offences. They would rather see them go to prison, because that's what the current state of affairs is. They're welcome to refute that, but that's what the situation is. If you're busted for having quantities of weed that the police deem to be excessive, you will go to jail. No way about it. This is a vast waste of the valuable taxpayers' money that the first opposition speaker already mentioned. No, thank you. Hundreds of people are arrested and prosecuted for non-violent cannabis-related crimes. This is a colossal waste of this money and police resources. As you might already know, the police these days are often too interested in knocking on people's doors for tweets that apparently violate prime ministers. But these cannabis-related offences add to that burden even more. These resources could be far better spent tackling serious crime. Consider the economic benefits of legalisation. Regulated cannabis markets generate billions in tax revenue in places like Canada and the US. This money can be redirected into vital public services such as education.
In the states, in the United States that have legalised cannabis, they have seen a significant increase in accidents related to driving under the influence of drugs in comparison to other states. How can you justify the legalisation of cannabis when it's creating such an increase in accidents that are ultimately killing people's lives? They might not be killed by cannabis, but they're killed by the accidents which are caused under the influence of cannabis.
Well, the answer is proportionality. We allow alcohol, don't we? Fairly unregulated. That doesn't stop people getting behind the wheel of a car and drink driving and customizing the roads. It's all about proportionality. Regulating the industry ensures safety, cuts off black market profits, and ultimately reduces crime. In conclusion, legalising cannabis is a logical, compassionate, and economically sound decision. It provides much needed relief to those suffering from chronic illnesses, upholds the principles of personal liberty, gets the nanny state off our backs, and redirects valuable public resources towards more pressing issues. The choice before us is clear. We can claim the outdated, fear-driven policies like the gentleman who spoke first, in his great doctor in Paisley, the induced fear, thou shalt not smoke cannabis. Or we can embrace a future where we treat cannabis with the same level-headed approach that we apply to alcohol and tobacco.
tobacco. Let us choose progress, let us choose compassion, and let us choose freedom. I urge you to support the motion.
Now call President Emeritus Tailte McSparron Haslett to continue case for the opposition.
Good evening, members of the House. I am but a humble billionaire, and I come to you today with a business proposition. This is a win-win for everyone involved. You see, with this business venture, I will make a lot of money, which is a very good thing because I really like money. But I will also be able to feed the poor and hungry at a fraction of the price that we currently do. So I get money, and the hungry get meals that they can afford. When you want to invest in that, but there is one small hiccup though. You see, technically the thing that I'm putting in the food to make it cheaper, it's been banned. But it's been wrongfully banned. So what if people eat like a lot of it and they face moderate to severe health issues? I make a lot of money and most people get fed. And that's all that we care about, money and convenience. So let's do it. Let's put sawdust back into your bread. Who's with me? Nobody, not even proposition? Oh, well, interesting. One guy. You see, in the past when we found out that something was bad for us, we tended to ban it. And it was an amazing thing that the law did. We found out that lead in vape poisons us, so we banned it. But for some reasons nowadays that doesn't seem to be happening. I'm constantly reading the news to find out that, oh, by the way, companies have been like putting estrogen and arsenic in your potatoes and your tins of beans or whatever, and the government and companies just turn a blind eye. And this comes down to two factors: money and convenience. They don't care about your health because by the time you see the negative effects, it's too late to change. And that is exactly what will happen if we legalise cannabis. We will repeat the same mistakes as cigarette and vape companies and create a generation of people whose new crutch will be cannabis. The proposition making the argument that legalising cannabis is good for us are falling for the same tactics used time and time again. At first, vaping was branded as a healthier substitute to smoking. I actually remember the first time I saw a vape was when I was 8 years old and my pregnant auntie was vaping to try to get off of cigarettes because she didn't want them around the baby. And spoiler alert, she's addicted to both now. And that was the big problem with vaping, is that companies like Jill used marketing that purposely targeted young people and got celebrities like Leonardo DiCaprio and Bella Hadid to promote their product, which led to a whole generation of Americans getting back on nicotine. And only now are we just starting to see the tip of the iceberg of negative effects and long-term health issues that vaping has caused. The strategic vision for cannabis is to be just as consumerized as vapes or cigarettes. This isn't just going to be the weight-controlled strands we're seeing sold in pharmacies currently. The government will eventually lose control because the people behind the cannabis industry are also behind big tobacco, specifically the biggest of the big tobacco, Philip Morris International, who make Marlboro, L&M, Chesterfield, and many other tobacco brands. Over the past 10 years, Philip Morris has invested and bought shares in 2 separate Canadian companies that grow cannabis to be sold in pharmacies medicinally. That's right, medicinally. Now, why are big tobacco investing in medicine? Because obviously they would never do anything to harm our health. We all know that when it comes to our health, big tobacco always have had the purest of intentions. They would never invest in the cannabis sector so that the industry can begin to murder their own. They would never fund public research that fits their own commercial gain, and they would never lobby against public health regulations in order to favour more industry-friendly ones. Big tobacco never has and never will do any of this, is what I would say if it was opposite day. And we know that this is Philip Morris's eventual plan for cannabis, these cannabis companies that they've bought shares in and invested in, because all the way back in 1970, the president of the company wrote, "While I am opposed to its use, I recognise that it may be legalised in the near future. Thus, with these auspices, we should be in a position to, examine 1, a potential competition, 2, a possible product, 3, at this time, cooperate with the government." So basically, way back in the 1970s, the Marlboro man knew just how bad cannabis was for us, and yet still thought it was a great way to make money, so he took off his cowboy hat and threw it in the ring to be the main distributor of cannabis. And the actions that the company are currently taking prove that they are going through with their plan, and legalising cannabis will only lead to its success. Currently, we are at a place where the cannabis that is being sold legally is quite weak and expensive, so people are buying it. Teens would rather just order the cheap, strong stuff off of Temu with an AI-generated stoned Eric Cartman on the front of the packet. In And I was saying earlier, in 1 year, Alberta, Canada had 49 cannabis shops shut down, but it's not just because only old people live in Alberta, Canada. This is happening throughout Canada, it's just specifically Alberta, Canada. Maybe it is really old because it's quite bad there. So they're losing out on a lot of money. And considering we know who the investors are in these companies, this is an incredibly dangerous situation. Because now the government are going to feel the pressure of big tobacco breathing smoke down their necks to let them make something cheap and strong they can put in every corner shop and big Tesco's in the world. Legalising cannabis will lead to widespread, heavy and frequent cannabis use as companies walk and the government follows. Any current sanctions to control the drug will be forgotten in order to make money on the companies already bought up by big tobacco to continue to make profit for the foreseeable future. And I thought it was very interesting what you said in your speech earlier, because it reminded me of something when I was 14, and my dad, his best friend, and he's also I'm not going to name names because I don't like to use personal examples, but he's also my brother's godfather. When I was 14, he was talking in front of my little siblings about how he uses a lot of cannabis, and I went, hey, pass on grass, kids, and he went, where does it say in the Bible that I can't use cannabis? And I was like, oh, that's an interesting thing. And he also said it never directly led to anyone, cannabis use never directly leads to anyone's death, but he had a crippling cannabis addiction his whole life, and in his 40s he went into cannabis, cannabis caused him to go into drug-related psychosis, and 4 years later he died of a drug-related heart attack, because he then got into much more heavy drugs. So I do think that in a lot of cases people see addiction, such as cannabis, and see how it affects people's lives, and a lot of the times it does actually lead to their death. Now, I would like to once again become a billionaire and give the room a new business proposition, because sadly I'm not selling sawdust anymore because I was bought out by Big Red. But this product, it's going to make me a lot of money, and society, it's so full of stressed out, anxious, unhappy people experiencing a lot of pain, and this product, it can take that pain away and chill those people right out. But there is one problem. This product is illegal because it's heavily addictive, and if you do get addicted to it, you face paranoia and inactivity. You're 5 times more likely to have a psychotic break or develop schizophrenia. You're 5 times more likely to die from cardiovascular disease, and 14% more likely to die at any given time in any given year. Don't be the person who gives sawdust to the hungry or cannabis to the sick. Vote for the opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Sasha, for that speech, and I'd like to call Sam Haslett to close the case on the proposition.
Isn't this groovy? Now, to begin, I would like to state that the irony is not lost on me that I am standing here in the state of the devil's lettuce. But there's a very good reason. I was tricked by the internal convener into speaking this evening. I was told that if I spoke tonight, then I could get to speak next week and talk about how much I despise children. Now Misha has told me I'm not allowed to do that because I might embarrass the society in front of whatever honoured guests that she has invited. So, what is there to say about cannabis? No, not again, I've done that already. So, in terms of this, I have volunteered to go last because before I realised Misha's betrayal, I was going to do a serious speech and I wanted to do some rebuttal. But since I was cruelly tricked by you, I'm not. So I'm just going to talk about the things that everybody else has said, because I'm slightly tipsy and dying for a pee. Ralph, you talked about Amsterdam. I'll be getting to you next, Spratt. You spoke of Amsterdam, a place you clearly know much about. You spoke of Amsterdam as somewhere that we should look up to. Amsterdam is not a place to go. Amsterdam allows tourists to piss in the street and surrender to the Nazis in 4 days. second speech ever in this place and extol the virtue of Holland and Barrett. Holland and Barrett is an awful place. Full of expensive crap that's better get you to sleep. I realise now I'm presenting the rebuttal plans. So I may switch to you. Now I understand, Mr. Spratt, you want to present to us the best argument that you can give. But there's no need to lie. You stood up here with a straight face and pretending to have an honest heart in your chest. You said that we are living in a period of social change. Now, many of the people who like cannabis, many of the new age hippies and the crusty environmental types, they might like cannabis and they might be living in a period of social change, but you, Matthew, you are not. You live in Newton Stewart. Place that has not changed since the Dark Ages. Alright, go ahead. My granny is from nowhere near Newton. She is from Lifford, which is a much more enlightened and modern place to live. Now, Matthew, I've forgotten what I was going to say. But if you give me a moment, I will think. Newton Stewart. Newton Stewart is living in a time forgotten, when the Kaiser was the greatest threat to Europe, when Ryan was a liberal, and Kira Swale was in her late 50s. No. You make up scientific words so you can pretend that your hometown believes in evolution. And I know that where you live, they still believe in ingesting food by shoving it up their nose, as you so graciously put. And I would like to say that neither I nor most of the people in this hall care about our lung density. I don't care about my lung density. I smoke good, harmless, wholesome tobacco, and I'm all the better for it. P7s. P7s. You're polling these people. Next week, if I can bribe Misha effectively, I will be talking here about how stupid, thick, and awful P7s are, and all children. They say that smoking is bad. So, P7s don't know the joy of the first cigarette of the day. They don't know the joy of a new packet, peeling off the plastic, opening the lid, taking off the foil. No.
I mean, it's not a minute.
In the end of carrying on with whatever schedule Ryan has decided, I shall move on to Tailte. Grant, I shall not talk about you because you're in the same position as me. You shouldn't be here either. You are the humble billionaire, the epitome of the humble billionaire, the family enterprise who made billions by selling off excess children. And you do not like sawdust and bread. If this was the siege of Leningrad, it would not have lasted very long. Then I got a text message from a dead relation and I looked at the obituary, so I didn't hear the rest of it. And when I sort of woke up from my stupor, you were talking about an emu. So I don't know what you were talking about. And Jonathan, the lower of the toes wines. And I shall close by saying this. Misha, be careful who you choose to speak to when you need someone. And if I'm not allowed to speak next week, I will set fire to Tall.
I think I need a minute to recover. Sort of emotionally, mentally, just in every way. I do slightly more of a serious speech planned, so I'm sorry to bring this down from whatever that was. I would say I've been taking notes on the proposition speakers, and for Sam I have something scribbled out, and then below it says nothing of value was said. Although I think perhaps we value things differently, but there we go. Let's look at the arguments from the proposition. So the sort of argument presented was this idea of a legalised version of cannabis where it's sold Amsterdam style from sort of dispensary shops in a regulated market. But then we also had the other side arguing that one of the biggest strains that would be eliminated by making cannabis legal was the issues around regulation and the issues around the fact that we have to criminalise it. So if, as the proposition first said, we're going to still make it illegal in public and we're not going to have the smell of cannabis and we're going to be cracking down on public consumption of cannabis, but we're also going to be gaining the benefits of not locking people up for cannabis, that seems to me like a contradiction. The proposition also presented the claim The proposition also presented the claim that nobody has died from cannabis, which is patently untrue. In the last year, there were 298 deaths directly caused by cannabis in the Netherlands. Now, this doesn't seem like a small number, yeah?
Has anyone died directly from the consumption of cannabis?
Yes, 298 people in the Netherlands, as I just said. I don't have my number right in front of me, but Misha?
How?
Do you want me to find my laptop? The point is, 298, put it in that number for now while I get you the exact citation, so that I can quote to you from my details here. The point is that 298 deaths from cannabis in the Netherlands last year. This is in comparison to 480 deaths from alcohol, obviously lower. But the number that's not being revealed here is the other deaths caused indirectly by alcohol. So alcohol directly caused 480 deaths in the Netherlands, but indirectly it caused 8,300 deaths. And the key point here is with cannabis, we don't know what the numbers are going to be like for indirect deaths. We don't know because the research isn't there yet. Why do we make something illegal? Why does the government make something illegal?
Point of question.
Yes.
The figure cited is 298 total numbers of drug overdose deaths in the Netherlands in 2021. Because that's the only figure I've seen on drug deaths.
That might
298 in the Netherlands. No, that's just overall drug overdoses.
No American.
Well, okay. I'll discount that point for now. But the point I'm trying to make is long-term health effects of cannabis are not currently well understood. Much of the research agrees with this. We have seen short-term benefits in treating sort of serious ongoing things such as chronic pain, but we do not know the long-term health implications. Matthew Spratt, as the first opposition, carefully explained the sort of range and number of these long-term conditions which may happen and which are beginning to see more and more evidence. Brings me back to my point. Why does the government make something illegal? It's to protect the people. This side talks a lot about personal liberty, how if it's not harming anyone else, why should it be banned? I didn't give me a good argument as to why I can't take black tar heroin privately in my own time. Didn't really explain that. And it's because the government has to look out for the population, because the people are stupid. I think we can all agree.
Point of information?
Yes.
The first major Western country to introduce the cannabis ban is the United States. But the large reason for that was to demonize large numbers of Mexican immigrants who, habitually consume cannabis.
Yes, but
But heroin was also legal, alcohol and tobacco, as we had pointed out by that side, are legal. The health implications of all these things are well known, and yet they are legal. Why are they legal? Why is alcohol legal? Why is tobacco legal? It's because the government can't make it illegal. Do you genuinely think that if alcohol, with the societal impact we know it has, was introduced as a brand new substance today, it would automatically be made legal? I doubt it. The cost of alcohol, as pointed out by Matthew Spratt, is much higher than the benefit from taxation. The cost to society of alcohol is very, very high. To make alcohol legal, with it being a new substance, would be the height of folly. To make tobacco legal would also be the height of folly. That's why they're trying to make it illegal. That's why they're banning it for everyone born after 2008. So why would we make cannabis legal when we have the opportunity to wait? I'm not saying we should be arresting everyone who possesses cannabis. I'm not saying we should put them in prison. I'm simply saying decriminalise it, but don't legalise it. Because when we legalise it, we open the floodgates. Once we legalise it, it will be very hard to walk back. So why don't we wait? Why don't we find good evidence that it doesn't cause long-term health damages? Why don't we find good evidence that we can have it in a responsible and safe manner in society? Why do we need to legalise it now? I don't think there is a good argument to legalise it at this very moment.
On that point?
Sure.
Do you trust the government?
I trust the government. I don't necessarily always trust the government, but I do trust the government more than I trust the private market. We know the private market will try and sell us tobacco, we know they'll sell us alcohol, and we know they don't care about the implications. I would rather wait for science, I would rather wait for the clinical studies that are ongoing, I would rather wait for the clinical studies that are currently too small in number, too spread out, too underfunded. I would rather wait for clinical studies to come back with positive evidence that we can make it legal than to just make it legal and go, well, hopefully we don't discover that it's got bad implications in 10, 20, 100 years' time. I would rather research it, I would rather make sure we know it's safe for society. I would rather make sure we know what we're getting ourselves into than make it legal now. 30% of DUIs in Colorado involved cannabis last year. Almost 40% of expulsions from schools in Colorado involved juvenile marijuana use. The cost of alcohol is 15 times higher than the tax benefits. And the tax benefits they've posited for cannabis, 1.4 billion you said, that's less than 0.5% of the NHS budget. So the benefit of waiting is obvious. The benefit of legalising now is not. I beg, vote proposition. Vote opposition.
Thanks everyone for your speeches, and we'll now move to questions. So, do we have any questions for the proposition?
With 1 in 10 of first-time cannabis users then going on to develop a serious addiction, how would you address the effects legalising cannabis would have on psychiatric services?
Proposition to respond.
Well, basically that's kind of the same problem with any kind of what's designated as a harmful substance. There's related mental health impacts of alcohol abuse, for instance, or more class A drug substance abuse. I think it's probably managed, but I think this is a point of principle. You can't, mitigate increasing eventuality in that case. And we believe in the principle of legalisation, the positives of that outweigh the negatives, and that's really the answer I have for the opposition to respond.
I think people often use one of the arguments for bringing making cannabis legalised because it helps with conditions like anxiety and depression and different things like that. But actually, I think that it was just another crutch you can give society to kind of lean on, and that actually it creates more problems down the line. Like I already said, you're 5 times more likely to have a psychotic break or develop schizophrenia, and then also you develop paranoia and inactivity, which leads to just further anxiety and depression. So it will put a massive strain on the mental health services, which are already incredibly underfunded. So yeah.
Do we have a question for the opposition?
Mr. Spratt, you talked about the relative risks of marijuana smoking compared to cigarettes, tobacco cigarette smoking. But would you fail to account for? But would you say that it's possible you fail to account for the fact that tobacco cigarettes are far more regulated, and thus there's a sort of greater margin of error for harmful use for? I don't know how to word this. Cigarettes are sort of regulated in a way to mitigate as many of these risks as they possibly can, right? Cannabis is unregulated because it's entirely illegal. Wouldn't you say, isn't there the possibility that that's a sort of a negative consequence of a lack of legalization and regulation?
To answer your question, do you think I failed to take that into account? I don't think I failed to take that into account. Yeah, there you go.
Proposition.
Sorry,
that's the last time I respond to that. I think that's an amazing point, and I think when something is illegal, it is unregulated. We saw that when alcohol was made illegal in America in Prohibition. Obviously, I'm personally saying that I don't support an American-style cannabis adoption. However, I think when it is legalised, we can better deal with the mental health aspects that you're talking about and properly fund them. And also, mental health will go down for some people with cannabis available. So yeah, I think that was an amazing point, thank you.
Do we have any extension questions? So those of you who do, this is a question that is not directed to either side, but it's put neutrally.
There's a lot of discussion about the cost and the benefits of cannabis, so like the tax money for the health service, but also the tax revenue. How would you, and it wasn't really made clear to me at least, which side won that one. Which one do you think is basically, how do you make more money as cannabis and how do you lose more money as cannabis was legal? How would you?
Propositions.
So I talked about the economic arguments and the tax that are coming from VAT, and what the opposition is going to try and tell you is that it's going to create more mental health problems, it's going to be more strain on the NHS. Also, as I said before, you've got to bear in mind, people do benefit with anxiety, I have certain anxieties, and cannabis might help with that. When you sell something, as we all know, VAT is taken off of it. And the sales that the Treasury, I use Treasury and HRMC reports, the tax money that will come in is to 1.4 billion at least if we adopt the Dutch style approach to it. That might not be spent on the NHS, it's the government's responsibility, but it could be. It could be filling the black hole of £13 billion debt that we have in public finances. It's a whole range of things that it could be used for. And I think even though there are aspects that maybe there is a little bit of an increase, you've got to remember people also have an opportunity benefit for this as well. And when you put them both together, the opportunity cost and the opportunity benefit, I think it's quite clear that the opportunity benefit is much stronger. Thank you for your question. Opposition.
With all respect, I think what's being sort of salty by the proposition isn't completely the truth. As I stated in my POI earlier, we already as a country produce the largest volume of legal cannabis in the world. So the impact of legalising cannabis for consumption just recreationally isn't going to change that side of the market much. So tax outcomes there won't really increase. Tax from VAT, 1.4 billion, it sounds like an impressive number, it really does. But 1.4 billion is, as I said, it's half a percentage, less than half a percentage of the NHS budget. That's such a small number when we're talking about the sort of margins that we deal with in government, that it's next to sort of unnecessary. I mean, if you look at alcohol as an example, alcohol generates several billion in tax, but the costs are far higher. And the costs aren't higher just to the NHS or just to the police and justice system. The costs are also higher to social services and the costs are also higher to productivity. Productivity is not something we've touched on, but productivity costs will be high on cannabis. And I think to say that there won't be costs to social services or police and justice is to be, frankly, sort of misleading, because as this proposition said, they would like to crack down on public consumption outside of coffee shops, which will have an associated cost. So.
do a quick round of questions. So any questions for the proposition?
Unfortunately, if you look at the statistics, the UK has suffered in terms of its productivity rate, and cannabis is known for its stupefying and native-buying effect on the populace. Surely it would be much better to legalise cocaine to actually improve the economy as Wall Street and the likes of
proposition?
We consider all options.
Opposition to respond?
I mean, this side did say we should be able to take whatever we wanted in the private of our own home, so I don't see why they shouldn't be in favour of cocaine, black tar, heroin, morphine, opium, whatever.
Any questions for the opposition?
So for the first and third speaker, I heard a lot of statistics about DUI and cannabis. But from what I've seen, that's going to be pretty misleading because the groups that use cannabis typically have higher factors, like young people and men. And I'm wondering if it's really fair that we pass judgment on driving stoned based on statistics about people who aren't very good at it.
Well, I don't think the fact that you're a man or you're young is the reason you crashed your car. It's the fact that you were driving on the cannabis, probably the most likely factor compared to your age and your gender.
As they say, it's not the drunk drivers that we need to be concerned about, it's the drunk drivers.
Proposition to respond?
Joint effort.
I'll way of legal limits regarding the amount of alcohol you can have in your blood system before you get behind the wheel. Drug driving is non-advisable. I would assume that fit and proper regulation would address that. What we opposition have done is say that they trust the government. All that they've said is that, the implication was that if you're sober, you're lazy, basically, is what the opposition said. I've really yet to hear an actual argument that swings this as a principle. Why should we keep cannabis illegal? But I think proper regulation could do that.
Any abstention questions? So a question for equally times line. Go ahead.
The most important question is who smokes cannabis?
Well, I'm not too sure about this question. If anyone wants to freely admit that.
I shan't be admitting to anything, but I'll recall whenever I recently, not recently, it was a year and a half ago, I was asked by a work colleague, had I ever had weed, and this was like the second or third day on the job, and this is, so yeah, that was a bit of an awkward one. Put you on the spot.
What did you respond with? Delete that from the recording. Anyone in the opposition want to admit to being a hypocrite? No, okay. Well, we'll go now then to... Don't give it a minute to Spratt say something. Right, we'll now go to the vote on speakerability. This is not your position on the motion, it's which side you think spoke the best based on how they spoke rather than the topic at hand. So if you'd like to vote that the proposition spoke the best, please raise your hand. I'm sorry, I can't pull up. I was going to say, Vic, you just and if you'd like to vote for the opposition, please raise your hand now.
You keep them straight.
Matthew, you voting or not?
Anyone who thinks they were equally good or equally bad, please raise your hand. Can we please have the vote on speakerability, Mr. Secretary?
I voted for these guys.
No, don't worry about it.
Right, can we please have the vote on speakerability?
Old age. There are 9 votes for the proposition, 14 for the opposition, and 6 abstentions. That's the opposition. Carry the vote on speakerability.
And it's been very good being up here again, doing the sharing. We're now all going to head to Lavery's, so I don't know, follow someone there.
It is absolutely lashing down outside.
And also remember, let's talk next